We're back with another video of OP, Terrible, and Meh. A video series where I'm trying to get through a whole bunch of different units that are either perpetually overpowered, perpetually terrible, or just kind of not picked even though they're not overpowered or terrible. And today, our overpowered unit, we're going to start with the Land Ship. I hate the Land Ship. It's been banned from our tournaments forever because, as you can see, it is currently surrounded by heavy cav and it is absolutely massacring them, only taking little bits of damage here and there. My General of the Empire is getting murdered. That's not ideal. But the main problem is happening in front of you. Cavalry or anything fast enough to catch it often don't know how to interact with it, so they'll just run in front of it or run next to it or something. And that's pretty annoying. Honestly, that thing's unbreakable. I don't even need you. Get out of here. So while the Land Ship just kind of walks away slowly, it murders all the things that can catch it, and you can kite away from things that are ranged. And if you get up to the things that are ranged, you can just drive through them because you are a chariot, so you can still cause them a lot of guff. And in this series, I try not to just say give things cost reductions or cost increases, but for only 2,100 gold, this thing does almost always pay for itself by just driving away and shooting, because it's abusing every problem with Total War Warhammer's unit interactions, where if something's moving, a lot of melee units have troubles hitting it. There they got a good surround finally, so they got some decent damage out, but I'm still driving away. And let's check its value. Yep. All right, 3,000 value when it only cost 2,100, and it killed a bunch of heavy cav that were trying to chase it down. And again, if you have archers and stuff, they can do okay against it, but it can just drive through them and disrupt them because it is also a chariot. It is also unbreakable. It also has a giant HP pool, making it a good target for regrowth or earthblood. So not to just say make this thing more expensive, how to fix the Land Ship and make it more fun and interactive for everybody involved. I would increase its damage. Wait. I would increase its damage. Wait. Calm down. Stop typing. But I would take away its forward-facing and backwards-facing guns. It should not be a 360-degree shooting monstrosity. That shouldn't work. The cavalry that are stuck behind it should not be taking any damage because none of the guns can see them. So what this thing should have is two angles of fire, left and right, right? It's where the cannons can come out of their ports, and it's where the gunners can line up and get a good broadside of musket shots. And then you can have a mix of cannonballs and musket shots. They do decent damage to large and infantry. It's still going to be a big, dangerous monstrosity, but not for things that are directly in front of it. So if things are like a large monster is dueling it, it's also not getting shot in the face by a ton of things that shouldn't be able to see it theoretically. Or if things are following it around due to unit jank, which again, another easy solution is say fix unit jank. But again, that feels like such a big and boring answer, a big change and a boring answer where it's like, yeah, of course, okay, if every unit worked perfectly, then yes, cavalry that can easily catch the Land Ship and surround it would hit it while it's moving. But they don't do that. They walk alongside it trying to figure out how to hit it while they die. So that sucks. But anyway, if CA hasn't fixed that by now, it's definitely not a choice. They don't know how. And I'm not trying to be a dick. I don't design video games, so I imagine the coding is very hard. Anyway, so the things that are trying to follow them shouldn't also be dying while trying to follow it. And the things in front of them shouldn't be dying for dueling with the thing. It should have increased damage, but only coming out of its side. So if you line up those proper broadsides, you can get a lot of good damage out. And if you don't, if you micro it poorly, or if you pick bad angles, you won't get that much damage out at all. Next thing about it would be, now we're giving it more damage, but decreasing the angles with which it can shoot. I would also give it significantly more missile resistance. It has none. I would give it like 40% missile resistance so that small arms fire like archers and handgunners don't do much damage to a freaking battleship. But again, with the buff and a nerf, I would not make this thing an unbreakable fast chariot. Like it has full power for some godforsaken reason, giving it acceleration and speed. So then it charges through stuff in melee. That's not a thing. This thing should never enter melee of its own choice. That makes no sense. So it should have almost no melee damage whatsoever. It should have decent mass. Like I'm not going to pretend a giant ship on wheels wouldn't be able to push through infantry, but it shouldn't do that much damage on its way through them. And it should have horrible like speed. It should turn okay quickly, but it shouldn't have a high top speed because it's a fucking ship that belongs in the water on a couple tiny wheels. Like it should not move fast. So its speed should probably be corpse cart level. And it should have high damage. So it should be like a battle installation. It should not be a weird, unbreakable, fast chariot, 360 shooting war wagon motherfucker. I don't know what that's about. Honestly, like, I've thrown CA some bones here where I'm like, I'm sure that fixing the units is hard and they would have done it if they could. This concept was horrible. The land ship is a terrible, terrible idea. So I'm trying to fix it and make it like not super toxic, but this thing is fundamentally flawed and shouldn't be in this game. And some of the campaign players are going to be like, well, it's for campaign. Okay, I mean, if you want to throw your campaign on easy mode, yeah, get like 5 land ships and run over the AI forever because they can't handle it. And the AI doesn't know how to use the land ship because they'll sit there and use it like artillery and they won't use most of its functions. And then you can just shoot it easily from a distance. But if you play against a player and they're going to heal it, they're going to kite you with it, and they're just going to run around, you're going to have a miserable fucking time. And there's a reason it's banned from most tournaments. It's not that it's crazy overpowered and impossible to deal with. It's that it's toxic and unfun while still being too strong. On the exact opposite end of the spectrum, it's one of the worst legendary lords. I think I made a top 5 worst legendary lords list, and Epidemius was on it. This guy is a mess. He has been terrible since he was released, and we need to try and figure out how to fix him. For once, this isn't a unit. I know I have a rule that says I can't just say decrease cost or increase cost. For once, I wouldn't increase or decrease his cost. I think he is so unfathomably terrible that increasing or decreasing his cost wouldn't change anything. His kit just sucks. He has decent melee stats and an okay weapon strength with abysmal speed, low armor, not a giant HP pool for being nearly immobile. And then he has a weird asynergistic kit. So he gets Tally of Pestilence, more physical resistance and melee attack for each nearby entity death. Usually, and only affects demonic units. Usually the units near him dying are his demonic units that he wants to buff up. So by the time this gets charged up, you've lost a lot of your demonic units, so there's no one left to buff. It's pretty bad. And even if you're like, well, maybe if he kills a bunch of the enemy, or if he hangs out with Chaos Warriors and Marauders and they die, and then he brings up his demonic units who now have all these buffs. Okay, but how is that good for your battlefield presence? Like, you're holding half your army in reserve, waiting for the rest of your army to fucking die so that you can make the other part of the army stronger? Like, that's not an efficient use of your forces. No one would want to do that. It gives melee attack, which is fine. It's okay. Nurgle has high melee defense and stuff, so they could use the melee attack. The physical resistance, you're giving it to demonic units which already have physical resistance, so anybody is already going to be using magic damage against them. So here's my proposal for the Tally of Pestilence. Well, sorry, we should go through all of his stuff before we start talking about the rework. Epidemic Outburst, it does damage per second, and it makes everyone crazy slow with a little mini explosion that doesn't do much damage. The slow is neat, but he himself is so goddamn slow. He's never getting into a fight where the slow is going to matter. If he is in a fight, it's a grinding fight that the enemy already wanted to have. This is only kind of good against cavalry trying to cycle charge him, but that's such a rare and niche case. I don't love it. Maybe it's not the worst thing. Summoning Exalted Plaguebearer is fine, and then the Sands of Sickness is this weird ally buff, enemy debuff thing with melee damage, reflection, vigor, and melee defense. That's fine. That one's the most fine. So to rework Epidemius and make him viable while not being overpowered, keep the Tallyman's Blades and the Sands of Sickness how they are. Those are fine. But these two don't synergize with him at all. He is a crazy slow thing. So this whole Contagious Lethargy is not going to work. I would keep the Explosion. I would make the Explosion armor piercing, because you should punish anybody who's blobbing up around this guy. Because he's so crazy slow. They had to opt into that fight, and now they should be punished for it if you got to this point and the enemy has no archers. And then instead of the Contagious Lethargy, so we've switched the damage from base to armor piercing. And then instead of Contagious Lethargy, I would give it a pretty significant damage over time component. So even after they touch him and they get blown up and they're like, wait, that was a dumb idea, and they start to run away, they're still going to take damage as they go. And then the Tally of Pestilence. I would cut this thing about it being nearby entity deaths, because you want to use it on the charge with your demonic units to make them more effective. I would have it have a unique thing in the game where it takes any physical resistance you have and turns it to ward save. So your demons, I mean, it's like demons have, I think, 20% physical resistance. So for a temporary amount of time, it switches that physical resistance to ward save. And then instead of melee attack, I would give speed. to all allies, not Epidemius himself, but allies would get their physical resistance switched to ward save, and then maybe 50% speed or something as they do this like sprinting charge as the lumbering plague bearers and nurglings just turn into like a tide that slam into you. Because plague bearers' main problem is how slow they are, and they just get shot by arrows and die, or get hit with burning head and burn away immediately or something like that. This could make your first charge rather impactful and get some of those high value demonic units into melee, where they honestly don't do that well in the current meta anyway. So it's not like, well, then that'd be OP, human boy. It's like, no, there's still a lot of shit that kills plague bearers anyway. This would at least make them get to a fight. But I think that would make Epidemius better in demonic Nurgle charges. And then he himself, still being a pretty bad duelist, but at least he can get these explosions out, where if anybody wants to mess with him, they at least have to worry about getting blown up. You could have it on a pretty long cooldown that only recharges in melee, though, if we're going to have it be incredibly damaging, which it currently isn't. Probably shouldn't have that low of a cooldown or anything. So yeah, you could have it regen while he's in melee. Because then that also puts it on the Nurgle player not to just pop it whenever it's off cooldown, but to wait for a meaningful target. Like, oh, I'm about to waddle into some Phoenix Guard and then blow a bunch of them up, or like threaten Kislevites while you're just churning through their armored Kossars slowly but surely with Epidemius and some Nurgle guys. If the Griffin Legion want to charge in and help out, you're just holding on to this outburst waiting for them. But if you use it willy-nilly, you should be able to be punished. So could add some more interactivity, but currently it just fucking sucks. And then in the meh category, Ku'gath Plaguefather. Ku'gath's weird. He's so expensive. So the meh category, if this is the first time you're clicking on this type of video, this unit's neither overpowered or underpowered. It's just not used very often. Here's why. Ku'gath is too polarizing. He's one of the poorly designed units in the game that I call a light switch unit. And it's a concept I have for a lot of things like the Thunder Barge, the land ship, Ku'gath. Do you have what counters Ku'gath? Yes? Cool, you won the game. But we didn't play it. Nope, you won. But we haven't even started. No, you won. What? He is so expensive and so game-changing that if he is countered, you just lose. The rest of your army is too small to play around. So if your opponent has artillery that does damage to single entities, like cannons, like bolt throwers, if your opponent has significant range units, like 6 or 7 archers, 4 or 5 handgunners, if they have a bunch of skirmish cav, Ku'gath just dies and doesn't matter. He's a slow-moving, mortis engine duelist artillery piece. His only weakness is ranged, but if you have enough range to kill him, you won. That's it. And that's pretty boring. That's why a lot of people don't want to take him unless they know their opponent doesn't have significant range. You see Ku'gath versus Khorne, because Khorne has pretty low ranged capacity. You see him versus Slaanesh, because Slaanesh has pretty low range capacity. You see him versus vampire counts, on and on. And that's just not fun. That's not a fun way to play the game. So I would make him significantly cheaper, but also taking away his, like, I can do everything the best bullshit. So I'd make him cheaper, keep him as a caster, and I would make him a pretty bad duelist if we're going to keep him as this artillery guy. So he could have a bunch of buffs and his mortis engine, and he's insanely tanky. No one's taking any of that away from him, but let's reduce his weapon strength to legitimately like 300 and his melee attack down to like 25. And you might think that's too intense, but like, what's the point of this character? He's this big, tanky, mortis engine caster, right? If you get near him, you're going to get sick and vomit and die. Or if you stay away from him, he chucks nurglings at you, which is pretty hilarious. But the fact that he can also beat like Skarbrand in a duel, like just 1v1, he can beat Skarbrand, calm the fuck down. Like that's not okay. If Skarbrand gets to him and Ku'gath's not sitting in his own support, Ku'gath should have a pretty bad time. Skarbrand should rip him limb from limb. But like Ku'gath is a fucking caster, so he should be able to sit there and throw spells at like N'Kari or Skarbrand, or he sits on top of nurglings that he summons on himself, or he gives buffs to his troops, or he drains down all your troops and laughs at you. But if you get a 1v1 with him, you should win. Not everyone should win. I'm not saying like Tretch Craventail should beat his ass, but I'm saying like Skarbrand and N'Kari and Karl Franz with all of his buffs popped, Luin Lancor with all of his buffs popped, 1v1 with no support should beat Ku'gath in melee for this to work. I don't really care about your lore reasons, where it's like, oh, but in the lore, he's a greater demon. He can't have weapon strength in the 300s. He can. Like, for the health of the video game, he can. And in the lore, he's not even that great of a duelist. Like, he's fine. But again, if you want to complain to me about lore, Skarbrand should beat him in melee. Like, pure, no spell casts, melee. Skarbrand should beat him in the lore. He 100% would. Because the only way Skarbrand would lose is if, like, Ku'gath casts something to, like, rot his weapons or, like, rot his flesh away and stuff, and that's a fucking spell. He's a spellcaster, you know? But, like, he shouldn't win a fucking slap fight with Skarbrand. That's just stupid. So if you reduce his melee stats by a lot, you can reduce his costs by a lot, and make him, like, significantly less percentage of your army, and then if your opponent brings the counters for Ku'gath Plaguefather, you don't just fucking lose the game because a third of your army died. Now, like, a fifth of your army died, and it's pretty bad to lose a fifth of your army. No one's saying it's going to be easy, but it's not a light switch unit anymore. It's just you're heavy indexing around Ku'gath, but it's not like you lose the game. So I think that could be healthier for him and just make the game better. And this one doesn't require changing any of his abilities or anything. It's just nerfing his base stats, which are insanely high for what he is. Anyway, hope the overall video was interesting for you as we whinged about Nurgle. Goodbye.
Subscribe, yes, yes.